There is a particular kind of silence that happens at a desk, late in the evening, in front of a blank notebook page. You've heard about this method before. Someone told you, keep a diary, write in English every night, and eventually the language will simply become part of you. So you bought the notebook. Maybe it was a nice one, thick paper, a good pen to match. You sat down, you wrote a sentence, maybe two, about your day. And then your hand just stopped. A thought crept in, quiet but corrosive. What is the point of this if I don't actually know whether it's correct? I'm probably just making the same mistakes, over and over, cementing them deeper into my brain instead of fixing them. There's no teacher here, no one to catch the errors. So what exactly am I building? Besides a notebook full of wrong sentences, the notebook closes. It goes into a drawer, and it doesn't come back out. This happens to an extraordinary number of people learning a new language, and it has a name, even if nobody's ever said it out loud to you. Call it the teacherless writing trap. It's the belief that practice without correction is not just imperfect, but worthless. That unless an expert is standing over your shoulder marking up your sentences in red ink, the entire exercise is a waste of time. And so, instead of writing something imperfect, people write nothing at all. But that belief, as reasonable as it feels in the moment, is simply wrong. And today we're going to take it apart completely, because the truth is, you do not need a private tutor sitting beside you to build real, lasting fluency. You have something now that didn't exist for previous generations of language learners. You can, quite literally, become your own teacher, and we're going to show you exactly how. This is the story of a simple method, 5 sentences a day, and how something that's small, repeated consistently, quietly rewires the way a person thinks, writes, and eventually speaks in a second language. Let's start with the page itself. Because before we talk about grammar or correction or growth, we need to solve the very first problem. The blank page, here is the mistake almost everyone makes when they start a language diary. They treat it like an exam. They sit down determined to write something meaningful, something impressive, reaching for vocabulary words they've seen once in a textbook but never actually used. They aim for a full page, deep thoughts, complete paragraphs, and it destroys them within a week. Think about what that actually costs, physically and mentally. 20 minutes of effortful, uncomfortable writing every single evening after a full day of work or study, when your mind is already tired and your motivation is already thin. By the 3rd or 4th day, some part of your brain quietly starts treating this diary the way it treats an unpleasant homework assignment. And when your brain files something under obligation instead of habit, it starts finding reasons to skip it. Just this once. I'll do double tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes, so the method has to be smaller. Deliberately, almost stubbornly small. This is where the 5-sentence method comes in, and its power lies precisely in its restriction. Every evening, you write exactly 5 sentences. Not 4, not 6. 5, and each of those 5 sentences has a fixed assigned job, so that you are never ever staring at a blank page, wondering what on earth to write about. The first sentence is the core action. What is the one main thing that happened today? Today, I finished a major project at the office. Simple, concrete, done. The second sentence is the physical feeling. How does your body feel right now, in this exact moment? My eyes feel tired because I stared at a screen for most of the day. This trains you to notice and describe sensation, which is a category of vocabulary most learners badly neglect. The third sentence is the social interaction. Who did you speak to today? I had lunch with a coworker, and we talked about our weekend plans. This forces you to practice reported speech, past tense, and the specific vocabulary of relationships and conversation. The 4th sentence is the small joy. One tiny thing, it doesn't need to be dramatic, that made you smile. The evening was warm, so I walked home instead of taking the bus. This one matters more than it seems, because it trains your brain to actively search for small positive details in an otherwise ordinary day, which, as a side effect, tends to make the day feel a little better too. And the 5th sentence is the tomorrow target. One simple, achievable goal for the next day. Tomorrow, I want to wake up early and practice my listening. This closes the entry with intention and quietly turns your diary into a conversation with your future self. Why does this 5-sentence structure work so much better than the open, freeform version? Because it eliminates the paralysis of the blank page entirely. You are never sitting there wondering what to write about. You already know. You follow the shape, fill in your day, and you're done. The entire exercise takes less than 5 minutes, which means, critically, it survives your busiest, most exhausted days. A method that only works when you have energy and time is not a habit. It's a hobby, one that will quietly die the first time life gets complicated. A method that takes 5 minutes survives everything. Now, let's address the concern that shut down your notebook in the first place. How do you know if what you wrote is actually correct? Here is where the modern world hands you something previous generations of language learners simply didn't have. You finish your 5 handwritten sentences in your notebook, and then you open a device and you use it, not to write for you, but to check what you've already written. Free tools like Grammarly or conversational AI tools can function as an extraordinarily patient, endlessly available teacher. One who never gets tired of your questions and never judges your mistakes. But there's a specific trap here too, and it matters. If you simply type your sentences and say, "Fix my grammar," most tools will do exactly that, and only that. They'll hand you back a smoother, more polished version, often so polished it barely resembles your original voice, and you will learn almost nothing from the exchange, because you never understood what was wrong or why. Instead, you need to ask a much more specific question. Something closer to this. Please review these 5 sentences. Point out any grammar or spelling mistakes. Explain in simple terms why they're mistakes. And show me how a native speaker would naturally phrase the same idea, while keeping my original meaning intact. That single shift in phrasing changes everything about what you get back. Now, the tool isn't just rewriting you, it's teaching you. It will start to notice patterns, the kind of patterns a human tutor might take weeks to spot. Perhaps it notices that you consistently forget the preposition after the verb listen. Perhaps it catches a recurring mistake in how you form the past tense of irregular verbs. These are not random errors. They're structural habits, and once they're named clearly, they become almost impossible to keep making unconsciously. And here is the step that makes the entire method work, the step most people skip because it feels unnecessary. Once you have your corrections, you go back to the physical notebook, and you write the corrected sentence by hand, directly underneath the original, in a different colored pen. Not typed. Written. By hand. There's something almost old-fashioned about this instruction in a world full of digital shortcuts, but the science behind it is solid. The physical act of writing, forming each letter with your own hand, engages a different, deeper layer of memory than simply reading a correction on a screen. You're not just receiving information, you're rehearsing it, embedding it into muscle memory the same way, in a strange but real sense, that your accent was once embedded into the muscles of your mouth. Over weeks of doing this, your brain begins to quietly reroute around the specific errors it once made automatically. You stop needing the red pen for that particular mistake, because it's no longer a mistake. It's simply how you write now. But the deepest value of this entire method doesn't reveal itself on day 1, or even in the first month. It reveals itself later, in a moment that almost every consistent diary writer eventually experiences. Picture this. 3 months have passed. You've written 5 sentences almost every single evening, sometimes tired, sometimes rushed, but you kept going. That's somewhere close to 100 pages of real, lived, personal English, written by you, corrected by you, absorbed by you. On a quiet weekend afternoon, you pick up the notebook and open it, not to today's page, but all the way back to page 1. And what you read there will surprise you. The sentences are short, simple. Covered in corrections, red or green ink crowding the margins, evidence of a version of you that was still finding its footing. You'll remember writing them. You'll remember not knowing certain words. You'll remember the version of yourself who wasn't sure this whole thing would even work. Then you turn to yesterday's page. The sentences are longer now. The vocabulary reaches further, without straining. And the margins, the ones that used to be crowded with corrections, are nearly empty. This moment, and it really is a distinct moment, tends to hit harder than people expect. Because most language learners spend months feeling like they're standing completely still. They study, they practice, but progress in a language is slow and largely invisible day to day, which makes it deeply demoralizing. You cannot feel your vocabulary expanding the way you can feel a muscle getting stronger after a workout. But a diary gives you something almost nothing else in language learning gives you. Physical, undeniable, dated proof, not a claim, not a feeling. Actual evidence in your own handwriting that the person who wrote page 1 and the person who wrote yesterday's page are not linguistically the same person anymore. And there's a second, quieter benefit that builds up alongside all of this. Your diary slowly becomes something no textbook could ever be for you. A vocabulary resource built entirely out of your own life. The words in it aren't generic examples pulled from a course book, disconnected from anything you actually care about. They're the specific words tied to your job, your relationships, your evening walks, your particular sense of humor. When you review old entries later, you're not memorizing abstract vocabulary lists, you're reconnecting with memories. Which means the words attached to them stick in a way that borrowed textbook sentences never quite do. None of this requires a classroom. None of this requires a professor correcting your work in real time, or an expensive course, or permission from anyone. It requires 5 minutes in the evening, 5 sentences with a fixed structure, and the willingness to let a free digital tool quietly become the patient teacher you thought you couldn't afford. Your diary becomes a space with no grades, no judgment, and no audience but you, where mistakes aren't failures, they're simply the raw material of tomorrow's improvement. So here's what matters most right now, tonight. Not tomorrow morning, not once you've bought the perfect notebook, right now. Take whatever is nearest to you, a scrap of paper, a notes app on your phone, anything at all, and write one single sentence. Just one. Describe the best thing that happened to you today, in English exactly as it comes to you. Then take that one sentence, run it through a free grammar tool, read the explanation, and write the corrected version underneath it. That's it. That one sentence, however small it feels, is the actual beginning. Not the notebook you haven't bought yet. Not the perfect routine you're planning to start next Monday. This one sentence, tonight, written imperfectly and corrected honestly, is the moment an independent English writer actually begins. And 3 months from now, on some quiet evening, you'll turn back to today's page, and you'll see, in your own handwriting, exactly how far you've come.